What is he doing? May covered Peter's eyes. For some reason, the clerk threw away a gun and started rolling on the ground. This scary scene is full of weirdness. There's a strange creature called a boggart, which can illuminate a person's greatest fears. To put it simply, it is an illusion. John blinked, and the black in his pupils returned to normal. As the Wizard King, he naturally needs some special methods. This is a method learned from boggarts and is very useful as an interrogation and punishment. At one time, wizards were called evil. The clerk gradually became quiet, and John picked up the fried chicken and took a bite. He nodded and commented like a gourmet. As a bomber, he controls the heat just right. May couldn't even figure out who John was and how he could eat it. In May's eyes, the person in front of her was extremely mysterious. May asked uncertainly, "He's dead?" "No, I fainted from extreme fear." John held the chicken drumstick in one hand and said in a seductive tone, "That 1 million is now ownerless. Do you have any ideas?" He habitually uses money as bait to test people. 1 million. Only then did May remember that she still had 1 million yuan. Given the family's current financial situation, 1 million yuan would allow them to live a better life. But May was not moved. "Instead," she said as a matter of course, "we need to let the police arrest him." "I find you to be a truly kind person." John put down the chicken drumstick in his hand and said with a smile, "Then let's fill our stomachs and get ready to go to the next stop. I think little Peter is hungry too." Peter's eyes were already drawn to the fried chicken, so May had no choice but to let him eat. Over fried chicken, they talked about Hell's Kitchen. May is now like John's guide in New York. Let this person who hasn't been in contact with the Muggle world for 10 years quickly get to know this place. The Hell's Kitchen mentioned by the clerk is the most chaotic place in New York. Even the police don't go to Hell's Kitchen after dark. It's a paradise for bad guys, drug addicts, and gangs. All kinds of crimes can occur there. In the most prosperous New York, there is the most unbearable Hell's Kitchen. These contrasts are also part of New York's diversity. The clerk mentioned Simon. May thought about it and seemed to have heard this name before. "He's a tough guy, at least that's what I heard." May is not a gang member, nor is she from Hell's Kitchen. Her home is in Queens, which is not far from that place. John nodded as well. He basically took a bite of the chicken leg and stopped eating. May and Peter quickly finished their fried chicken and chicken nuggets, and they were really hungry. It's very strange, as it should be very lively at this time. But from the time they entered the store until now, no other customers appeared except them. John cast a Muggle-repelling charm. People who come near here will suddenly remember something and leave, or they won't even notice this place. Enjoy a meal of fried chicken in peace. John also learned enough information. There weren't enough clues in Hell's Kitchen during the day, so he planned to go there at night. First, let the two of them have a full meal, then send them home, and then cast a forgetfulness spell on them. Nothing happened today. Done. John planned it well. But sometimes, plans cannot keep up with changes. He had no intention of continuing to manage the clerk, so he took the two of them out of the fried chicken shop and hailed a taxi to send them back. Just as I sent the person downstairs, the sirens sounded. John was taken to the police station. He looked at the person opposite him. He said helplessly, "My car was blown up, but instead of arresting the person who blew up my car, you brought me here. We need your assistance in the investigation." The FBI agent looked very serious. John looked at himself in the interrogation room, and it didn't look like he was assisting in the investigation. It does have some meaning of interrogating prisoners. "Can you explain why you didn't call the police after the car exploded?" The detective conducted the interrogation diligently, even though the questions were somewhat challenging. John leaned back in his chair and said calmly, "I'm hungry." The detective was stunned. What did this have to do with not calling the police? "I was hungry, so I went to eat fried chicken." John said innocently, "Is that weird? If $1 million sports car gets blown up, is your first reaction to eating fried chicken? It sounds like there's nothing wrong with it. Damn rich people." The agent frowned and drummed his fingers on the table. "Be serious. I need you to answer one more question." The agent stared at John. "As far as we know, this car is not in your name." "That's my father's." John said it in a relaxed tone, and he knew that these people were not looking for him for no reason. "Watson Wick is your father?" The agent frowned and his tone became serious. He remembered that the information showed that the Wick family did have a son. However, this son has a very low sense of presence, which makes people suspicious. But John had all the necessary documents, and the agent fell into deep thought. As their main surveillance target, They quickly formed a team when they received the report of the car bombing. Unexpectedly, Watson Wick was not found, but a son was fished out. Most importantly, they knew nothing about John. There was a subtle change in the agent's gaze as he looked at John. The inspector, who had been silent the whole time, spoke up at this moment. "I think, as a son, you should understand where your father is going. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but my father didn't tell me his itinerary." John knew that these people were lured out because of his father's car, but he had no use for them for the time being. His answer was very unsatisfactory. The agent wanted to say something else, but he didn't want to linger any longer. "I'm not going to have my lawyer come, so can I leave now?" John's attitude was just like those of the rich second generation. But the FBI really had no reason to keep John. Lawyers in the United States are more difficult to deal with than those in other places. "I could only watch him leave. Keep a close eye on him, those people won't let him go," the inspector said to his men. After leaving the police station, John changed his mind and wanted to have his memory erased. He took a taxi and turned around to go to another place. The taxi drove into Manhattan. John got off the car in front of a magnificent hotel. He walked towards the hotel. The guests in this place are strange, most of them like black. Guests wearing suits look more like they are here for work than on vacation. John walked to the front desk. He also has dark skin and a bald head, but his temperament is completely different from that gangster. The receptionist was wearing a neat suit and gold-rimmed glasses, giving people a sense of meticulous standards. "Hello, how can I help you?" The hotel receptionist smiled without showing any teeth. John took a gold coin from his pocket and pushed it toward the front desk. "I need to know something." The receptionist saw the gold coin and slowly pushed it back. He smiled and said, "The bar would be a great place." John picked up the gold coin, walked into the elevator, and started to go down. When you walk into the bar, you will find that it is not a place for noisy drinking, but a quiet place suitable for getting a little tipsy and drinking alone. At the bar, the woman was shaking the shaker in her hand. "I want to know about Simon." The woman poured a glass of wine from a shaker and handed it to John. John took a sip and said, "Please give me more details." "You're a stranger," the bartender said, raising an eyebrow. "We don't do business with strangers." "How about this?" Taking out 2 gold coins from his pocket and pushing them over, John said, "I'm sincere." "I'll think about it." The bartender took the gold coin and said, "Wait a moment." She wrote Simon on a piece of paper, put it in a capsule and put it in the tube. After a while, a new capsule fell into the pipe. She took out the capsule and opened it, revealing clues about Simon. Handing it to John, the bartender looked at the young face and gave him some advice. "You'd better not mess with him. You're the second person to tell me this." John took the clue and stood up to leave. Opening the clue in the elevator, John looked at the address above and shook his head, saying, "Dad's organization is really profitable. This is his father's hotel chain. There is always a black side to every white side of this world. The white ones are orderly, and if they want to manage the disorderly black ones, they need someone to establish order in the black ones. And John's father was that kind of person. He set up many rules and regulations to make this black community feel more stable. This was also John's first time to experience the service in a hotel. If the FBI hadn't come to him, John would have almost forgotten that his father also had some uses. He had found those gold coins at home. Sometimes his father wasn't very good at hiding things. Coming out of the hotel, John watched the sky gradually darken, and he was ready to go to Hell's Kitchen. If nothing unexpected happens, that Simon should have a connection with the 10 Rings gang. A gang leader who hangs out with terrorists. This strange combination made John wonder what their purpose was in attacking his father. The answer will be revealed tonight. John took advantage of the night and hailed a taxi. When the driver with an Indian accent heard that John was going to Hell's Kitchen, he was so scared that he begged him to change cars. "I changed 5 cars in a row and basically went to Hell's Kitchen, but no driver would accept the order." If John wasn't afraid of being seen by some ignorant person while riding his broom, he really wanted to fly across the sky. In desperation, John had to find another way to travel. The bald man who was stabbed with a pencil by John was thinking about his miserable experience today in the car. As a New York gangster with great ambitions, he was scared to the point of almost peeing his pants. "This was a huge blow to me, a high school dropout with the highest education in the village." It even made him begin to doubt whether he, as a man, was a sissy. When he thought of his miserable appearance, he couldn't help pounding the steering wheel and uttering greetings. "I can't be a sissy. A real man should fuck men. Your mouth is really dirty." The upset bald man was about to scold when he heard this, but when the words reached his lips, He felt that the voice was somewhat familiar. When I turned around, that face that was like a nightmare and could not be shaken off appeared outside the car window. John smiled and waved. "Would you mind taking me to Hell's Kitchen?" "It's mainly because I don't know the way." The familiar smiling face made the bald man's legs go weak. He wanted to escape, but he couldn't. Hell's Kitchen. The most chaotic and dangerous place in all of New York. This is a slum area, and poverty means wealth. Illegal industries run through here, and it is a paradise for all kinds of dangerous bad guys. Hell's Kitchen at night is abandoned by order, and the huge gap between the rich and the poor has led to the emergence of new rules here. When the last ray of sunlight falls, the rules of the game here change. The ones who dominate here are no longer the righteous police, but a group of gangsters who have their own rules of the game. More than 90% of the police officers who appear here at night are likely to be illegal police officers. They are lawless, with drug addicts and red light districts running rampant in the streets. If you walk into that dark corner, you can see the shameful transactions. On the street, you can see robbers robbing people of their money, and pimps and women standing under streetlights. The wealth created by the chaos makes the illegal assets here enough for the government to turn a blind eye. Although there are some messengers of justice who roam around here, hoping to improve this place through their own efforts. But it is obvious that the 3-foot-thick ice does not form overnight. Order is a luxury, a delicate balance that one does not want to be disturbed. The pickup truck drove in, its flashing lights reflecting Ferdinand's mood at the moment. As a street thug who occasionally bullies others by intimidating them, Ferdinand has 1 foot in the underworld. But it was only half a foot. He can scare kids outside, but in Hell's Kitchen, the most chaotic area in New York, he is just a nobody. Beads of sweat dripped from his forehead, his body was shaking, and he had to chew his words several times before he could utter them. "We're here." He spoke to the people in the back seat of the car with an ugly smile on his face. John looked out the window, stroking a pencil in his hand. "It's a little better here than I thought." If those New Yorkers heard this, they would just say he was dreaming. There's no worse place in the world than Hell's Kitchen. Open the car door and get out. As John's shoes touched the road, the pickup truck behind him couldn't wait to start. "By the way, wait for me here, Ferdinand." His casual words made Ferdinand stop his foot on the accelerator. Ferdinand's eyes widened, his face filled with horror. He never said his name. How did that person know it? John ignored his shock and walked towards Hell's Kitchen, New York City within a city. Although it is in Manhattan, the existence of Hell's Kitchen looks like it was graffitied by a low-level painter. John was holding an address in his hand and dodged some guys who were either drunk or high. At the door of the bar, 2 bald strong men in tights stood at the door with an unpleasant look on their faces. "Hell's Angels." John put the paper away and nodded. "That's it. This is a bar in Hell's Kitchen with a flashing neon sign that looks like a combination of devil and angel wings." The booming and restless music reached John's ears even through the layers of aisles. The Hell's Angels bar is Simon's base and also the most famous bar in Hell's Kitchen. There are all kinds of transactions here, and in illegal areas, drunk women will become prey to men. John prepared to go in. This is a private club. 2 big hands blocked his way. The white, burly security guard with a face full of flesh stared at John. John touched his chin and asked curiously, "How can others get in?" The security guard said, "They have Bliss certificates." "Bliss proof." John looked at the woman who walked in next to him. The woman lifted up her clothes and saw a demon eye with wings on her ribs. "That is the proof of bliss. To enter the Hell's Angels bar, you cannot enter unless you have a certificate of bliss." John thought for a moment and covered his left arm with his right hand. He smiled and said, "Actually, I have one too." "You're here." A word interrupted John's next words. The security guard looked in the direction of the voice and saw a man wearing red sunglasses, a suit and holding a guide stick. He seemed to be able to see and came to John. "Sorry, I think he's in the wrong place." "He's my friend." When the burly security guard saw the blind man, the expression on his face was not so unkind anymore. "Matt, you should hear what your kid said." The security guard crossed his arms and said dissatisfiedly, "He's going to the Bliss dinner." "I think he just heard stories about this place from the adults." Matt came over to John, put his hand on his shoulder, and laughed. "Young people are always curious and want to show off." John was confused and asked, "Who are you?" "For your sake, Matt," the burly security guard muttered. "You helped my sister get some money back from that jerk last time." "Thanks, Jack." Matt pressed down on John's hand and exerted force. With his extraordinary physical strength, it should have been easy for him to pull someone away. But what surprised him was that he couldn't take this person away. "Come with me," he whispered in John's ear. John was about to go in directly, But when he heard him say that, he didn't feel any malice and followed Matt away. The two walked in Hell's Kitchen. It was strange that Matt was blind, but he dodged the thrown bottles accurately as if he could see. The two walked along and came to a law firm. It's not actually accurate to call it a law firm, because this place is far from being as clean and spacious as those social elites should be. A fat man inside was scratching his head. When he saw Matt coming back, his face lit up with joy. After seeing John, the fat man quickly stood up. "You can't always bring lost sheep here," the fat man said, but in his hand he took a cup of coffee and handed it to John. "Do you want milk?" "Thank you, no thanks." "Well, I hope you don't find it too bitter." Before the fat man finished speaking, he saw John take the coffee and drink it. He was stunned. "That's freshly boiled water. I think the temperature is just right." John shrugged, put down the cup, and looked around with interest. "So, you're a lawyer?" he asked Matt, who brought him here. "I hope you are not trying to blackmail me." "I'd really like to do that," the fat man complained. "We received a lawyer's fee this month. And by the way, mister, Lee sent you the flounder. You can try it tonight." The fat man looked very anxious. As lawyers who graduated from law school, they basically did not have any decent and generous salary in this place. It made him want to volunteer and provide defense services to those villains. Matt just smiled and said, "Although Mr. Lee lives in poverty, he is a good man." "What about him? Is he a good person too?" the fat man asked anxiously. When John was called, he simply picked up the cup and took another sip of coffee, saying innocently, "I'm curious too. Why did you bring me here?" The fat man asked Matt to give him an explanation, and Matt said, "He said he had a certificate of bliss, Fudge." Fudge. When John heard the name, an image of the Minister of Magic whom he had forced to step down popped into his mind. When the man named Fudge heard this, he quickly took 2 steps back. "I didn't know you had a quirk like that, Matt." Judging from his performance, it seems that bliss proves to be something that people avoid. Matt felt helpless at his friend's terrified expression. Of course not. This guy just wants to get in. He doesn't even know what bliss-proof is for. Fudge looked at John's young face. He knew he was being too extreme and agreed, saying, "That's definitely the stupidest excuse I've ever seen." Matt looked at John. "Finish this coffee, get in a taxi and leave this place. I know a driver." "What is the proof of bliss?" John was confused at this time. What were these two people keeping in suspense? "The bliss certificate, also known as a slave license," Fudge explained. "It's something Simon, the owner of the Hell's Paradise bar, created. Having this mark means you can be fucked by anyone. To attract customers to his bar." Fudge smacked his lips and said, "Those women who want to survive have this proof. You can imagine. Last time, I saw someone near the bar having sex in the alley, without even paying for a room." John's face turned dark. So this is how this broken thing is used. He felt a chill down his spine when he thought about how he almost copied one. "How do you know for sure he isn't?" Fudge asked Matt. "I mean, you can't see it. The smell." Matt sniffed and laughed. "Not many of those guys are this clean. You must be well protected, just like a newborn baby." What's your name?" Matt asked, remembering that he didn't know John's name. "Just call me John," John said helplessly, covering his face with his hands. "You don't have to describe my smell." The reputation of the Witch King I was almost ruined by the Elysian proof, and John became more and more determined to find out what Simon was thinking. "Can I ask what those proofs of bliss smell like?" Fudge asked curiously. "You don't want to smell it. It's even more pungent than industrial cosmetics." Matt frowned and said, "Some guys can't hold back sometimes." "Stop," Fudge said, indicating that he understood and felt like vomiting. While the two were talking, John walked around the small law firm. He picked up the document that Fudge had been scratching his head at, glanced at it, and suddenly said, "You weren't there by coincidence, were you?" Matt and Fudge stopped discussing and Fudge shouted, "Hey, don't touch that thing." John put down the documents and turned to stare at Matt. "It seems you are a lawyer with a sense of justice." Matt was silent for a moment, then explained, "Simon doesn't just accept women who want to survive. He also kidnaps women from the civilian population and forcibly brands them with a certificate of bliss. Those women are unable to resist. Even if they are being abused, the judge will classify them as women who have fallen into depravity because of the evidence of extreme pleasure. This is Hell's Kitchen, and even the judge has to follow some rules." One of the law firm's clients was given a certificate of bliss, which meant that she was only compensated for the abuse she suffered. Matt's sense of justice makes him ready to destroy the Hell's Angels bar to liberate those poor people. He was also scouting the area today and discovered John, the lamb, who had fallen into the trap. You mean Tracy? Fudge disagreed after hearing what Matt said. The judge has already dismissed our case. So they've become even more arrogant. Matt dropped the cane in his hand heavily. He gripped the cane tightly, feeling uneasy. There's a new case, isn't there? Fudge put his hands in his pockets and fell silent. He was just dealing with a new Bliss certificate case, using the same method, the Bliss certificate that was forcibly branded, easily depriving the girl of her innocence. We are just lawyers. There are some things we can't change. Fudge sighed. We are not the police, let alone Iron Man Matt. Maybe the police can't do anything about it? John's voice rang out. Fudge then noticed that John had already taken his seat. He was about to speak when John picked up a document at random and started reading it. It's no secret Simon obviously made those people an offer they couldn't refuse. He raised his eyebrows and chuckled. After all, money is a good thing. You've finished your coffee. Matt stood up and prepared to see the guest off. I'll get you out of here. No, John said, making no move to get up. Are you lawyers? It just so happens that I'm in a bit of trouble. If you can handle it for me, I wouldn't mind paying you a substantial commission to solve your urgent problem. John said meaningfully, it's a considerable sum. Fudge wanted to refuse, but if they continued to fight lawsuits for those poor people, they probably wouldn't even be able to afford to eat flounder. Jack was still at the door, but this time his face was full of confusion. Matt, you're going to cost me my job. Matt, the lawyer who had helped Jack's sister, looked back at John behind him and sighed. Please be flexible, Jack. I'll get some child support for your sister. Do you remember? Of course I remember. Jack hesitated. His boss Simon was a ruthless character who might kill him at any time. It's not worth it, no matter how you look at it, to sacrifice yourself for a favor. Seeing that Jack wouldn't give in, Matt turned around and came to John and said, You see, there's no way we can get in except for our Bliss certificate, their acquaintance and membership card. I think I can handle that, Mr. Lawyer. John passed Matt and came to Jack. The two of them were uncomfortably close. Jack subconsciously wanted to step back, but he stopped. John held a bundle of green banknotes worth no less than $2,000 in his hand. I think it's okay if you close your eyes for half a minute. It's not a big deal. I just want to go in and take a look. He smiled, looking harmless and without any sign of danger. The voice carried an offer that was impossible to refuse. You only make a few $1,000s a month. Don't you want to earn more? No one will ever know. He is the devil, whispering to corrupt people. The loyal security guard was shaken. In this place, his muscles were only good for guarding the door. In an area where almost everyone has a human dematerializer, this is considered the safest job. Thinking of the TV at home that just broke down. He still couldn't help himself, reached out to take the money and put it in his pocket. A smile curved up John's lips as he said to Matt, I think we can accidentally get inside. Jack closed his eyes and pretended not to see anything. Just as the other security guard was about to speak, John stuffed a bundle of money into his mouth. Matt had never thought of this method. After all, as a not-so-rich lawyer, he really couldn't do such a bold move. As for John, if the problem can be solved with money, there is no need to take action. Walking into the bar, you will hear loud and noisy music accompanied by subtle and decadent sounds. Those who covet bliss can't wait any longer. Unfortunately, one of the two people who came in was blind and the other had no such ideas at all. They walked inside. The deep corridor leads to a deeper place. Push open the door. The bombastic music seemed to penetrate the eardrums and destroy the brain. Matt's eyebrows wrinkled, as if he was a little uncomfortable with the explosion. He reached out and touched his ears. This is not a place that is friendly to people with sensitive hearing. John glanced at him and asked, Are you okay? That's fine. I'm more curious about why you came in. Matt was suspicious of this lamb, who almost became the proof of bliss. This place has nothing to do with your questioning by the FBI. It does matter. Even under the loud music, the two of them spoke in low voices. Because the bastard who blew up my car has his employer here. John's eyes swept across the bar, which was overly lit with neon lights. On the lively dance floor, men and women were venting their excessive desires, twisting their bodies as if they were electrified. They don't need any dance steps, just follow their instincts. There is a second floor in the bar and the stairs are guarded by bodyguards. These people are different from the security guards working outside. They are real gangsters. Okay, Show me your financial ability, employer. Matt also noticed the group of people. A blind person is more sensitive than a sighted person. He was eager to try and test his ability with money. John didn't refuse and took out a bundle of banknotes from his seemingly inexhaustible pocket and put it in Matt's hand. Matt walked over sanctimoniously. John didn't know what was said, but he saw Matt being grabbed by the collar. John shook his head helplessly and walked over there. I don't know what you want, but can you let go of my friend? The bodyguard stared at John and said word by word, Get lost. Matt's muscles were tense, ready to take on these guys at any time. As a lawyer, it's normal to exercise occasionally and have the ability to take down these people, right? John was not too angry at the bodyguard's arrogant remarks. He just looked at the bodyguard. His reddish-brown eyes darkened, his sleeves slipped down, and he flicked his wand gently. Confusion spell. I think you should have been notified to let me go up, John said firmly. The bodyguard looked dazed for a moment, hesitated for a moment, and said to himself, It seems so. Matt was put down. He straightened his collar, but his mind was full of questions. The sudden change in attitude is puzzling. John patted Matt's shoulder and chuckled. To get involved in this, you need influence and background. Matt's inner doubts grew, but he didn't show it. The employer in front of me is becoming more and more mysterious. From the time they appeared until now, their acquaintance was limited to their names. But John brought him to this dangerous place, as if he knew he had the ability to protect him. Walking up the stairs, it feels like heaven compared to down there. The hell of carnival and the paradise of tranquility. This is the origin of hell and heaven. Matt's ears moved and he heard the sound of conversation in several rooms on the second floor. How long have you been like this? John asked casually as they walked. Matt shrugged. When I was a kid, I was blinded by an accident involving radioactive materials. But when God closes a door, He'll open a window for you. I see, John nodded, and he was wondering how a blind man could be as dangerous as Nico Fury. The two of them stopped at the same time and looked at where the bodyguard appeared again. Okay, you go this time. Matt made a gesture of invitation. John walked up to the man in leather jacket at the door, took out a piece of paper and started reading it. A206, second floor, Hell's Paradise Bar. John read out the address and asked, Excuse me, is Simon home? Who are you? The man in leather jacket raised his head, his eyes filled with ferocity and viciousness. John smiled and said, Tell him. He lowered his voice, and after letting the man come closer, he whispered, The night demon is coming. Night demon. Matt had a keen hearing and his expression changed when he heard this. How did he know that? At this moment, Matt seemed to have stepped into a huge trap. He felt that the other party might have deliberately appeared at the gate of hell and heaven to wait for him. What kind of person is he and when did he expose himself? What is the purpose of approaching yourself? What were once ordinary things seemed to be premeditated when recalled again. After hearing John's words, the bodyguard at the door looked at John deeply, then turned around, opened the door and walked in. John glanced back at Matt, a little surprised that the lawyer seemed so conflicted. What are you worried about? He didn't know that someone was brainstorming because of that sentence of Night Demon. Night Devil was John's nickname when he was in school. To this day, there is still a legend in Slytherin of Hogwarts that the Night Demon will eat young wizards who wander at night. This is purely a coincidence of names. I just said it casually to make it easier to cast the spell. Although John knew something about Marvel, he couldn't remember any of the guys who were too unpopular. Matt was still worrying about some conspiracy when the bodyguard who had entered came out again. The bodyguard said, You can come in. John said to Matt, See, it's very simple. Matt tightened the cane in his hand and said with a smile, Of course. He is ready to fight at any time. John nodded and walked inside. Even though he can use legilimency. But there is a condition for capturing minds and thoughts. Eye contact. You ask John to make eye contact with a blind person. Therefore, he could only vaguely sense uneasiness from Matt. But he chalked it up to nervousness about meeting Simon. They walked through that door. The first thing that caught my eye was a group of people arranged by Simon. When they saw the two people come in, they didn't say anything, but stared at them quietly with an oppressive feeling. John remained calm. Matt was a blind man. The two walked along this path, and another door opened at the end. A beautiful office appeared before my eyes. The owner of this place, Simon, was sitting in a comfortable chair, wearing a floral shirt and puffing on a cigar. Night Demon. Simon looked to be in his 40s, with a black beard and a sneer on his lips. Uncomfortable eyes swept over the two of them. No one would regard Matt as a threat because of the guide stick in his hand, and more eyes were on John. "I have a question that I need you to answer." John didn't care. He walked up to Simon and looked him in the eyes. "Why did you blow up my car?" "Blow up your car?" Simon said with disdain. "Who do you think you are? Do you think I should attack you?" He didn't know John's identity, but because the word daredevil reminded him of Daredevil, he let him in. "Oh." John pretended to be confused, "but that's not what the fried chicken guy said." "The fried chicken guy?" Simon's originally dismissive expression changed. He stared at John and asked, "Who are you? You don't even know the person you're going to kill?" John shook his head helplessly, his pupils gradually turning vertical, and his voice became deeper. "My name is John Wick." Wick. When Simon heard this last name, his face changed drastically. He reached for the drawer, but a pencil pierced the back of his hand. John said lightly, "You are a little naughty and I don't like it. Tell me, where is the person who asked you to pay 1 million? John's shadow covered Simon. Those vertical pupils brought fear to Simon. He was covered in cold sweat, and even when he opened his mouth, no sound came out. His fingers were stiff, and even moving his fingertips was a luxury. Fear spread throughout the body. "The 10 rings." Simon gave the answer John needed. The fear disappeared, and he gasped for breath and slumped in the chair. John didn't pull out his pencil. Instead, he straightened his sleeves and said with a smile, "Tell me where those people are?" "I don't know." "Ah." The second pencil stabbed into his other hand, and John slowly took out a pen from the pen holder on the table. "You have one more chance." He smiled, looking like a devil in Simon's eyes. Simon looked like he was being tortured, with 2 more holes on his hands. The cap of the pen was opened, and John's casual look made Simon tremble all over. He didn't know why he was so scared, but he knew that the pen would pierce into some part of his body just like the pencil. Driven by a strong desire to survive, he confessed. John dipped his pen in the blood on the table and wrote the address on the back of the paper. "Thank you for your cooperation." Closing the pen, John put it into the pen holder. He stepped aside and made an invitation to Matt. "It's your turn." "What?" Matt was surprised. He was ready to fight. But John's decisiveness made his preparations useless. John said meaningfully, "Aren't you worried about a case, Mr. Lawyer?" Bliss-proof. Matt understood what John meant. He took a deep breath, a hero traveling through the night. This was the first time he encountered such a ready-made thing. John also gave a friendly reminder, "Don't make too much noise, or someone will come outside." "No, no." Simon shook his head frantically. He couldn't understand why the bodyguards let these people in. "I completely forgot that I wanted to see the so-called Daredevil." But he didn't know that Daredevil and Daredevil were not the same person. Matt stopped moving forward. "He's not the kind of hero who would kill anyone easily." "Let's go," Matt said. "Maybe if you try harder, you can save 1 or even a dozen girls." John stared at Matt. "Don't let your kindness hold you back." Matt looked at John and asked, "What about you? Why don't you do it?" John smiled and said, "Because I prefer to see other people's choices." This is a bit of his bad taste. There was a guy who forced him to choose before, but he ended up throwing that guy in a cage. "Don't kill me, I can pay a lot of money," Simon cried, while moving his right foot close to a button under the table. He had his hands pinned and his right foot pressing the button. Beneath the seemingly pitiful crying, a sinister nature was revealed. The button sank softly, a sound no one else could hear. But among the 3 people in the room, 2 of them turned to look at Simon. Simon grinned and said, "You 2 bastards, die here." The door was kicked open and bullets poured out. Without any hesitation, Matt and John rolled over the table. The people outside finally knew who was coming to save them. John pulled 2 pencils from the table. Just as Simon was about to run, John grabbed his feet and dragged him back. He grabbed Simon's hair with one hand and slammed him to the ground. Simon died instantly from the heavy blow. He rubbed the pencil in his hand on Simon's clothes. He seemed unhurried and said casually, "Well, Mr. Lawyer, maybe I really need you." Here, John is referring to lawsuits. As for Matt, he had already determined that John knew his identity. Now is a critical moment, and he can't care about hiding anymore. The sound of bullets ricocheting off the walls created a picture of the outside world in his mind. When a round of bullets is finished, they stop shooting. Without any hesitation, he rushed out nimbly, and the guide stick in his hand turned into a whip, breaking the gun and hand bones with one blow. In this long and narrow corridor, he, a blind man, was like a tiger among a flock of sheep, and his powerful fighting skills quickly knocked down the combatants. John put his wand back down, shrugged, and said, "Well, this lawyer is very brave." Walking outside, there were 7 or 8 people in a corridor, and only the last one was left. Matt jumped up and stepped on the wall, then threw a punch that knocked the man unconscious. He was breathing heavily. Even with his extraordinary senses, Matt was still just an ordinary person. John said with insincere exaggeration, "I think lawyers are under a lot of pressure these days." "Stop pretending." Matt heard more footsteps outside. He lost his previous playful smile and said seriously, "You know who I am." "Who are you?" "Daredevil." Matt held the guide stick tightly in his hand. John thought for a moment and said, "If I tell you that I'm talking about the night demon, will you feel better?" "It's all the same." Matt was very angry. Now his identity as Daredevil might be exposed, and then he would have no chance of upholding justice at night. Even Fudge would be implicated. He pointed to his ears. "I heard everything. From the moment you appeared in hell and heaven, you've been approaching me, ready to use me." John filtered it in his mind. Well, Daredevil didn't appear in the Avengers, he didn't know him. "Okay, what if I tell you?" John looked at Matt sympathetically. "That Night Devil was my nickname when I was in school." "Your nickname?" Matt had been listening to John's heartbeat, but unfortunately, he didn't hear it. But he seemed to hear a different meaning from John's tone. "Then you tell him about the night demon." "Oh, we have to find an excuse to let us in," John said matter-of-factly. "Look, it works pretty well." Matt was silent. If it was a misunderstanding, then it seemed like I had just exposed myself. At this moment, the footsteps outside the second door became more frequent. "Simon's men are here." Don't think Simon is easy to deal with. If he hadn't wanted to see who the night demon was, it would have taken some effort to get to the people in that corridor. John patted Matt's shoulder and kindly reminded him, "Any way you can get out, Daredevil?" "Don't call me that name." Matt took a deep breath. He had a sensitive nose and an equally high IQ. He never thought that one day he would be the one to expose his identity. "You won't reveal my identity, right?" Matt looked at John. Fortunately, he had knocked down the others before he could speak. John grinned. "Of course, my lawyer." The more he said this, the more uneasy Matt felt. He even thought about whether he should get rid of John as well. He immediately remembered how John had dealt with Simon. Being able to nail a pencil directly through the palm of your hand to the table with such strength, there is no guarantee that you can succeed if you try to deal with it yourself. If it fails, there will be endless troubles. In the end, Matt chose to give up the idea. He turned and walked towards Simon's office. "Follow me." John wanted to see how he would perform, so he followed him. Back in the office, Matt knocked the stick, and the sound bounced back to his ears. An image appeared in his mind. He went to the window, smashed the glass with a stick, picked up the ashtray on the table and threw it down. The ashtray shattered on the ground, and the scattered glass fragments bounced out to convey a larger image to Matt. "Jump from here." The guide stick in Matt's hand has a secret, and a hook is ejected to hang on the windowsill. "Hurry! They're coming!" He heard the door open and urged John on. John glanced back at the man who had appeared in the corridor, and the pencil in his hand flew out. The first person to enter had a bloody hole in his head. The body fell down. The people behind stopped immediately. John took a running start, grabbed Matt's guide stick and slid down quickly. Matt was about to grab the rope when he heard bullets pouring down behind him. Without any hesitation, he rolled sideways behind the table to avoid them. The bullets shattered the wall, and the first person to rush in was the gatekeeper. He held a claw knife in his hand, and the fishy wind swept across Matt's cheek. This man has taken no fewer than 10 lives. Matt could tell the claw knife by the scent it carried. He reacted quickly, grabbed the pen holder on the table and threw it over, while stepping on the wall to gain leverage to cross the corner. After changing his position, Matt no longer had the means to go through the window, so he could only force his way out through the corridor. There is a killer behind and a dozen professional thugs in front. In the brief confrontation just now, Matt had already determined that the killer was quite powerful. He decisively chose to use thugs. The footsteps and shouts of the thugs are the best counterattack weapons. He constructed an image of the corridor in his mind, kicked the thug in front of him in the abdomen, and with his backhand, he grabbed the baton that was coming at him, snatched it away, and hit the third man on the neck. Although it is not a guide stick, Matt's fighting ability is significantly improved with the stick in his hand. He swung the baton, leaving a trail of shadows that lasted only 10 seconds before hitting the entrance from the end. The killer, who confirmed his boss's death, chased after him angrily. Matt swung his stick back, but the killer dodged it. "Open the door." The sound of a bullet leaving the gun reached Matt's ears. Without hesitation, he dodged it, rolling on the ground and stomping his heels hard on the ground. The sound made the entire second-floor structure come into mind. Damn it, it's completely closed. He cursed inwardly. The second floor was not open to customers, so Simon made it completely enclosed. There was no other exit except his window. The killer's footsteps were getting closer. Matt had no choice but to move. He rushed towards the stairs he had come from, and a gunman opened fire on him. Basically, no one could hit him. He was fast and agile, stepping on the stairs the moment he did so. The originally constructed image vibrated. It's music. Crazy music kept pouring into his ears. His face was in pain, and he missed a step and rolled down the stairs. The killer saw him change from the nimble monkey just now to the sloth lying on the ground, and walked towards him with a sneer on his face. Where did your agility go? The killer turned the claw knife in his hand, held the claw knife, and took 2 steps at a time to attack Matt. Matt barely managed to stabilize his image within 2 meters. Whenever the bombastic music started, his image trembled. This made Matt dodge in a panic. The killer kicked him into the crowd, and none of the guests who were already high on alcohol would call the police. They can only scream and shout, continuing to twist their youthful bodies, causing them to rot rapidly from the inside. They smiled, just like the name of this place. Hell and heaven. The happiness after falling into depravity makes people lose themselves. The killer has no martial ethics, and a normal person attacks Matt in various ways. He was playing with a mouse like a cat about to eat its prey. Matt collapsed in the middle of the dance floor, where the music was loudest. Tell me, who asked you to kill him? The killer's eyes were red. You have no idea how great he is. He is the one who has put me in my current position. He saved me from starvation. It's all your fault, you killed him. The killer has deep feelings for Simon, as he was raised by Simon. Although life was hard, he would never forget who helped him survive from that hellish slum. Just because of his own mistake, his boss died. The killer stabbed the claw knife into Matt's abdomen and said ferociously, I'm going to dig open your stomach and take out your organs. Exciting murder scene. Make this blissful dinner even crazier. Some people stuck out their tongues, like vampires eager to drink blood. Matt grabbed the killer with one hand, stopping him from continuing. It was just the frenzy of the voice that made him more and more miserable. I didn't expect that I would end up here. If only I had my guide stick or moved to another place. He promised himself that he could gut the killer. But all the advantages are not in his hands. His ears and sense of smell lost their function in this noisy place mixed with strong alcohol and ambiguous atmosphere. The killer used his other hand to punch Matt in the face, and he continued to punch him. Even though Matt's physique is better than that of an ordinary person, he is almost unconscious at this moment. Seeing that there was no obstacle, the killer gripped the claw knife and stabbed towards Matt with a ferocious roar. The blood-splattering, screaming, and manic melody made this place where demons were running rampant like hell. Matt thought he was dead, but he didn't feel the pain he imagined. Splattered blood dripped into his mouth and face. He reached out and touched it, the warm blood, the pungent smell of blood. The killer opened his mouth wide, making a sound of air leaking out. The heartbeat became weaker and weaker. He raised his hands and rolled his eyes with difficulty. The pencil stuck in his neck was taking his life. He saw the black hair, and the silent approach made it unnoticed by any killer. The killer used his last bit of strength to utter a word. Baba Yaga. At this moment, he finally understood what John meant. The night demon is coming. The pencil was pulled out and blood gushed out like a fountain. The killer was completely silent, and his blood stimulated the lunatics in the bar. John glanced at the gunmen and thugs who were rushing over. He handed the guide stick in his hand to Matt and asked, Are you still able to move? Why are you back? Matt touched the guide stick. He was surprised that John came back. John's pencil, dripping with blood, twirled until it stopped at his fingertips. He smiled and said, I'm not abandoning my lawyer. He ran around and came in through the main gate. He didn't know where the gatekeeper had gone. Matt didn't know what to say. This was originally John's doing. He stood up with the help of his guide stick, and the noisy music made him frown the whole time. How many people are here? He asked John. John counted them. About 20 or so. This place doesn't look big, but there are quite a few people. Matt's face was serious. Let's leave quickly. This place is not good for me. John said, Wait. Then he walked towards the DJ who was still playing there, smiled, and kicked him out. Simply press the stop button and the sound will disappear. Matt was stunned. John said casually, Just turn off the music. That's the truth. What I mean is that you should run away quickly. Even if you can dodge bullets, with so many guns, you will eventually get hit. Not to mention there's no cover here. The music stopped and the crazy people woke up from the joy of hell and heaven. They saw the body and Matt covered in blood. Screaming, this time a scream of terror. The crowd began to pour out, and except for those who were having too much fun, they were stepping on each other in the bar, scrambling for the first place. In the room on the second floor, some people came out. They were not panicked by Simon's death, but just looked down at the scene below. Who are they? A lawyer and a high school student? An old woman was discussing something with someone, and her eyes fell on John. John felt the gaze and glanced up casually. Compared to Matt's mood at the moment, John seemed very relaxed. He twisted his neck and asked, I'll take care of this. Can you help me sort out this trouble? What? Matt asked subconsciously, what trouble? Of course it's the police. John smiled slightly, his pupils constricting. I don't want to go to the police station. As soon as he finished speaking, John jumped up. Jumped from the first floor to the second floor. His jumping ability is enough to win an Olympic gold medal. Then on the second floor, he swung his left hand. His wand slipped from his hand and he raised an eyebrow. The wand was waved, and a unique ripple spread out. The weapons in the hands of the gunmen all fell apart. John began his performance with a clenched right hand. The three gunmen close to him squeezed together, and their bones made a teeth-grinding sound. He started walking. Anyone who stands in the way will fall. The faces of the guests on the second floor changed drastically at this moment. One person tried to run, but John shot a red light from his wand, causing the person to freeze and fall. Only the old woman remained calm. Everyone on the second floor fell down. John looked at the old woman and asked casually, You don't seem surprised. The old woman said respectfully, Of course, respected wizard, I have no intention of becoming your enemy. That's not up to you. John's wand flashed white light. The old woman's eyes became confused, but a surge of energy surged from her body, trying to resist. John glanced at her in surprise and cast the Oblivion charm again. That power was suppressed. John walked down from the second floor. He dealt with all the people in hell and heaven. Matt stood there, looking at John quietly, and asked, Who are you? John held out his hand and said, Lend me your phone. Matt held out his phone, and John dialed a number. Hello, dinner service is needed here. How many people? John looked around, thought for a moment, and asked, Do you know what hell and heaven are? Send hell and heaven to that specification, thank you.